the doctors still don't really know what's wrong 10 years on, and I'm still doing tests and diets and scans and all the
Mm.
rest of it. But there's just something in my body that doesn't function correctly. And as a result, it's sort of like, I imagine it's like a car. If you just started putting in, olive oil instead of petrol, it's going to work its way through the engine and everything just breaks down, and you can kind of pull one part out and pull another part out and fix it. But you basically just got a car that's not running right. And that's sort of what my body
Yeah.
started to do. And the symptoms are basically nausea, extreme fatigue, just constant viruses and illnesses, migraines, muscle aches, osteoporosis, which is a bone disease, and all this kind of stuff. And I I really ended up in a place in which I wasn't able to go out with people very often. I might go out for like one coffee or two coffees a week, and that would cost. I have to go back to bed for the day.
Gosh.
Couldn't play with my children. I couldn't sing. I couldn't work. I could hardly think. It's an interesting thing about the mind. I mean, we've discovered now just through exploring the gut and the brain that, if you get nervous, the mind can tell the gut what to do. So if you get nervous, you'll get that feeling in your stomach, right? Your nervous
Yes.
system, it'll affect your digestion. Well, it goes the other way too. So if your gut is out of whack and it's not processing food, it will send messages to your brain of anxiety and things like that. So what happens with chronic sickness is once your body starts to break down, it starts rewiring your brain into spaces of anxiety and depression and sorrow. And so you can get this feedback loop where your gut is making your brain incapable of dealing with normal life events, and then that's then sending messages down to your gut that you're in danger, and so your gut won't heal. And I just got stuck in this cycle for a really long time. So I was having panic attacks. I was thinking, am I dying? Am I going to be able to play with my kids ever again? Am I, is this it? If I left my family in destitution by doing music and spending all our money on this stuff? It was a really, really hard time. And then when I cried out to God, I heard nothing, just nothing. And so, that was a real surprise, because in my heart, there was the sense of, I fully trust you, God, to do the most incredible things. And yet in this season, for whatever reason, that's not happening. And I think that probably for me, I mentioned as a kid, I had this existential thirst for just knowing God and meaning. I think that was the big crisis of this moment for me. It wasn't actually that I was sick. It was that I couldn't make sense of why this was happening in my life. And how to relate to God in that space. So
you had seen him come through before so many times in your life and others. Did you start to look back and question whether that was real?
Well, I didn't, because the stuff we'd seen was crazy. How do I even describe it? I remember one trip God had told us, we're praying and God said, I want you to go to Germany and do a tour there. And we were like, Germany, how on earth? We had like a 1.5-year-old at the time. We lived off, basically we'd wake up in the morning and we would only have enough money to get through the end of the day. And we'd lived like that for 2 years. And so we're waiting, met this guy randomly, planned a tour, still no money, not a dollar. We needed $12,000 for flights. And I went down to the beach 6 weeks out from the tour and was like, God, I don't know what to do. I booked this tour. You told us to go. We got $0. Basically just kind of almost just said, that's it, God, I need money, and drove off. An hour later, someone gave me $2,500 just saying, God told me to give this to you months ago and I never did. Here's some money. 2 hours after that, I was talking to someone on the phone who just said, you're not going to believe this, but God told me to give you $11,000. At the end of the day, I had $13,000. We went, bought the flights. That kind of stuff just happened all the time. Just really, really crazy. So it was hard to deny that. And I think that's what made it so hard. It was like, God, there's no way of denying the evidence of your existence in our life. There's no way of denying your miraculous intervention time after time, seeing people healed at shows or delivered or set free from stuff. So I know you can do it. The question is, it felt personal to me. Why won't you do that for me, Father? Am I hiding something from you? Have I not pleased you? Or
It's very
run
like
through all the
Job.
things in your mind. Yeah. I
And
mean, people, everyone left, right, and center is trying to cast out a Masonic spirit or something, like, repenting for ancestors 6,000 years ago. I don't know. You're doing everything trying to
yeah.
figure it out.
Yeah, I remember a
But yeah.
quote from your book that I have in my notes. It says, I mean, it's I'm smiling, but it's just so hard hitting. It's like, it was hard to love a God who stood by as my life fell apart. And that's what you're
Yeah.
describing, a God who came through before. You know this God to be capable. He's capable. He was willing before. So the only thing that's changed is his will toward me. And he's no longer willing.
Yeah.
And that can be really arresting.
Oh, man. Terrifying.
What do you say to
where else-
someone today, like somebody that's watching that, like, what do you say to someone who feels the exact same way that you were feeling when you wrote these words? It was hard to love a God who stood by as my life fell apart.
Man, I would only have one thing to say, which is what got me through it, which is just be utterly honest with God. Tell him about it.
Yeah.
Turn it toward him and let him have it. Just let him have everything. Because I think the greatest danger in our deepest suffering is that we don't fully feel it, is that we don't fully grieve it, and that we don't fully feel and grieve it with God. And I think sometimes we're so afraid, like in our Christianity, sometimes we make God out to be so holy, and he is so holy and so majestic and good. But he's also quite able to deal with us. You know what I mean? Like, I have children that, sometimes, I mean, my 3-year-old, I don't know where he's got it from. He started to say, if he doesn't get what he wants, he turns to me and says, Dad, I don't love you, Dad. You're not my favorite dad anymore. Like, I don't care about you. That's what he says. I don't care about you, Dad. And he walks off. And in that moment, his words, they hurt to a degree, because obviously I love my son. But I'm also a bit like, you know what? I get it, man. You're a 3-year-old. You're having a tantrum. I know you love me. I'll see you in 5 minutes, And I think in that moment of my life, I either had to let God know how disappointed I was, how angry I was. I had to let my language be honest and allow him to be that same father that can say, Strahan, I hear, like what you're saying is pretty rough. But I get it. You're suffering and you don't understand. And I'm okay. I'm going to sit here with you. I'm going to listen. And we're gonna get through this. We're gonna be honest with each other. And I think if you're going through that season in your own life, don't buy the lie that God can't handle your honesty. Feel the pain, cry about it, feel the anguish like the psalmists, like Lamentations, like Job, and be honest with God. Dignify God enough to be loving enough to sit there and just essentially cuddle you while you weep, which is what every good parent does, and which is, I believe, what God wants to do. And ultimately, it was years of that began to transform my life.